They're proposing a property investment program to help the social impact in property. And it would basically enable property investors to access state government funded incentives such as rates, concessions to provide affordable rental homes to those that, don't have as stronger incomes and would qualify. The tax thresholds be increased to 1.2 million for total wages and provide a 15% rebate on payroll tax liability if your organisation is below $4 million taxable wages. This is really just enabling small business to put their investment in the right places.
Welcome to Perth Property Insider, where you will learn how to grow your wealth and improve your life using Perth property. Our show is brought to you by Investors Edge Real Estate, the highly rated and award-winning property management, sales and buyers agency servicing the whole of Perth. Now, here's your host, Jared Mann.
Welcome to our first recorded episode for 2025. We're back and I've got some interesting stuff to cover today on some of the hot topics that we can expect to hopefully be addressed at our upcoming state government election, which is being held on Saturday, the 8th of March, 2025. It's going to be compulsory for everyone to vote. And hopefully both the Liberal and Labor and all the other minor parties will be coming out with their policies that'll affect housing and property. So stay tuned, because as the different parties release their policies, I'll probably do a deep dive on some of the major parties so that we can get a good feel for the landscape and how things are potentially going to affect property, our rental market, sale market, and overall economy. But today, what I'm going to go through is the key sort of points that the Real Estate Institute of WA, which is the body that sort of represents real estate agents, and, to a certain extent, it takes a lot of feedback and input from consumers as well. Ultimately, we want our industry to be strong, our rental and sale market to underpin the overall economy. And reading through their various policy points, I definitely agree with pretty much all of them. So thought it'd be a good starting point to put them out there as to how the policies could look, or at least how the Real Estate Institute of WA is platforming for them to look, and then we'll look at what is adopted by each of the parties going into the election. Now, before we do that, hopefully you've enjoyed our 3 throwback episodes that we had across Christmas. I picked out the most popular and listened to episodes of 2024. So if you haven't already re-caught those or re-listened to those, they're the best of the best to check out. And I didn't include any Perth property market updates in those 3, although those are very popular and very listened to. They're more sort of time-based and they date. So these were the more timeless ones that are definitely worth listening to if you haven't gone back over those. Hopefully you enjoyed them, but back into fresh content. Now let's take a look at what is the first election sort of topic issue that Bree was putting forward. And what they're looking at here is how to address some of the social impact in housing. And they're proposing a property investment program to help the social impact in property. And it would basically enable property investors to access state government funded incentives such as rates, concessions to provide affordable rental homes to those that don't have as stronger incomes and would qualify. So I really like this idea. I think it can really help incentivize investors and provide more affordable accommodation that's seriously lacking at the moment. The kind of concessions that they could look at is a rebate on local government rates or on land tax in return for investors renting their property out at a lesser than market rent. So they'd be compensated for doing so. And people such as, pensioners or those that fit within the criteria would be able to access rentals at a reduced overall rate to what is typically market. So I think this is a great idea, combining, private investors, mum and dads, to help alleviate and provide, some more social housing options. So that was a good starting out suggestion. See if that is taken on by any of the parties. Next area was to continue investment in social housing. And it was pretty crazy when I looked into the stats here that REBA's published, because at the moment, well, when they published this anyway, there were 20,132 applications on the public housing wait list, and it's only increased over the last year. So 20,000 people just waiting to get into a social house, into a state housing. And they have what they call the priority wait list, which is those that need it most urgently. And on there was 1,748 applications previously, but at the time of last stats, March 2024, there was 5,327. So to repeat that back, there was 1,748 in December 2019, which is around the time that COVID started. There's now 5,327 in the priority status. So that's nearly 4 times as many, 3 to 4 times as many, which is crazy. So a lot of urgent need for people to get into state housing. As the rental markets become tougher, there's people falling through the gaps. And, as the wait lists have grown out, the time to get a state house has obviously blown out too. So on average, it's 145 weeks when they recorded this data, 31st of March 2024, and 79 weeks for the priority listed applicants. So clearly a lot more investment is needed. I think this first suggestion that I mentioned of providing social impact housing from private investors would definitely help and shift some of these people on wait lists across to the private rental market, which I think would be a positive thing as well. So those two things really can work together. We need more investment in state housing, continued investment in state housing, and incentive for investors to provide something towards that pool. Next one, Reeve was suggesting, is tenancy training to stop those that are vulnerable, dropping through the cracks, knowing what to do with the overall rental market, how to get in, how to maintain their records. There's migrants, there's international students, there's the broader community that don't know how rentals work in WA. Reeve was proposing to develop online courses and fill that gap at the moment, to educate people on how our tenancy system works. So not a big difference that'll make, but I think it's still valid. Next one, which I think is incredibly important, is stamp duty reform. Reeve was proposing that the first homeowner rate of duty be adjusted so that it's pinned and indexed, if you will, to in line with the overall market. So at the moment, the stamp duty rate for first home buyers, if they go out and buy an unencumbered home and land together, it must not exceed $600,000. Otherwise, they basically get no stamp duty relief at all. And they pay no duty at the moment if it's below $450,000. So that lower threshold's below $450,000 at the moment, the upper threshold $600,000. What Reeve was proposing is that the lower threshold be pegged to Reeve's annual lower quartile median house price, so that as the market increases, and especially when we have big increases over a year, it still remains realistic and can help the people that need it most to get into the market. And they want the upper threshold, which is $600,000 at the moment, to be pegged to Reeve's annual median house price. So at the moment, we've hit $740,000, yet the threshold remains at $600,000. And it's really not enabling first home owners to get any help getting into a house, because you really can't buy a house anywhere for less for 600K or less at the moment. So it's really already fallen out of whack and is not providing the relief to people on the stamp duty, which is one of the largest upfront costs for anyone to get into the market, let alone first home buyers that are trying to scrape together and get their first property and get on that property ladder. So I think pegging it to those two stats will keep the first homeowner rate of duty in line with what's realistic and enabling more first home buyers to get into the market. So that'll be a really good one, I think. And then the next one that they're proposing is a downsizer stamp duty rebate. And what Rebate's proposing here is we've got the other end of the spectrum. We've just spoken about the first home buyers. Now for the downsizers, they're proposing a $10,000 concession for seniors that are going to downsize their property. And I think this could be really good because imagine out there we've got lots of family homes just sitting that have one or two people living in them. Certainly not an efficient allocation of our housing. It's a scarce resource. It could be filling the home of a family instead. Yet, because of the costs of stamp duty so high, it can really put off seniors from downsizing and making the move. And if this encourages more to do it, it's going to free up more of those properties, require less of those property types to be built, and encourage seniors to potentially get into a more suitable type of property, such as a higher density one where those are the types of properties we really need to be getting built and getting infill on. And if they combine that with going and potentially, this is more for probably buying an established property, but they could also go and access a off the plan purchase and get a concession on that, or this could go towards a concession on an off the plan purchase as well. So it'll also increase tax revenue if it encourages more transactions for seniors to downsize too. So it would be a win-win for everyone in that, a win for the senior, a win for the overall market getting access to more housing, and a win for the government to get more tax revenue. So that sounds like a really good idea, the downsizing stamp duty rebate. Now, next one, I think this could help a lot of purchasers. God, we've been asking for stamp duty reform for decades. Will it happen? It'd be wonderful if one of the parties came out and really stood and created some uniqueness on their election platform instead of just, copying each other and being plain Jane and boring. I think this would get some headlines if they came out with a 10-year stamp duty payment installment option. And what Ray was proposing here is enabling owner-occupied purchases. I'd say why not investors too? Why leave investors out of this? We need more investment stock. We need more rentals provided to the market. We should be, I think, doing this for investors and owner-occupiers to stimulate both to purchase. But Ray was proposing just owner-occupied. Don't necessarily agree with that because I think the overall benefits would be really great for rentals too, especially if it applied to both. So basically how they're proposing it to work is if you could have the option of paying your stamp duty out over 10 years, and in the event that you sold your property, you'd have to pay the balance on sale of whatever you had due. And it's widely documented that there's very damaging effects of stamp duty in that it causes a major obstacle and hurdle for people to change over properties. There's a lot of reason that people might otherwise move if they didn't have to pay out as much up front. So not only helping potentially first home buyers get in if they had some stamp duty to pay, it could reduce that down significantly. It helps the changing over owner occupiers, those that are downsizing, those that need to move closer to work might actually do it. Overall, it creates efficiency and greater productivity for the economy and improves people's lives because they can live where they want to live and not feel trapped in their property just because the changeover costs are too difficult to afford. If it's spaced out, it'd be much more possible. So I like the idea. I think it'd be a great first step in the right direction. And finally, what Ray was proposing on the stamp duty reform front is a concession continuing for off-the-plan purchases. So at the moment, the concession varies between 50 and 100% off of the stamp duty for an off-the-plan purchase, and it depends on the price point that you're buying at and the date of the contract that you enter. But these concessions are due to end on the 30th of June this year. So Reba's proposing that this continues because it will really help promote and help the creation of the more affordable and diverse types of housing options that we so desperately need. So we do need these more higher density options. It's the only way that we're going to be able to keep providing affordable housing for people. And it gives an incentive to developers to build this new, more energy efficient homes that are going to, make best use of existing infrastructure and amenities, and really take away the obstacle for people to get into that type of property. So I like the idea of continuing it, even though I'm not a fan of purchasing those types of properties myself. I can definitely see the need overall for our property market to have it continue. Now, let's go into some of the industry regulations that Reba's proposing that be adopted. I really like this first one, particularly because we deal with it every day. And what they're proposing is the direct bond lodgement to bonds administrator. So at the moment, there's a lot of scams going on. There's a lot of, cyber fraud with people paying bonds across to scams and not to the right places. So there's also a lot of compliance that has to happen from the department on real estate agents to make sure that bonds are paid across in a timely way. So at the moment, tenants need to pay their bond to the real estate agent. The real estate agent then has to pay the bond within 14 days to the bond administrator. Why not just have tenants pay directly to the bond administrator? It'll reduce the red tape. It'll provide confidence to tenants that their money is securely in the custody of bonds admin. It'll enable property managers such as myself to focus on higher value activities and not have to worry about, have we lodged the bond with bond admin in 14 days, not have to worry about other tedious things around handling this. The department won't have to worry about the compliance of it. Then they'll just be getting the funds directly. So I like the idea. Hopefully it's adopted. Please, please, please. It would make our lives a lot more straightforward as a real estate agent in the middle. Next ones. Reba's encouraging another thing here with payroll tax reform. And what they're basically doing is proposing that the tax thresholds be increased to 1.2 million for total wages, and provide a 15% rebate on payroll tax liability if your organisation is below a $4 million taxable wages. So ultimately, this is really just enabling small business to put their investment in the right places, not towards another tax of payroll. So it's a real disincentive at the moment for small business to add people once you get to the threshold amounts, because you have to pay more and more of this payroll tax. And what we should be doing is encouraging businesses to grow and for this investment to be put back into growing the businesses and, hiring new employees, purchasing new equipment, or expanding their operations. So the overall Chamber of Commerce and Industry has come out with this suggestion. Reba's backing it. I think it's a good idea, and it would make a small difference. It would align with what other states have done in Victoria, New South Wales and ACT, and South Australia have increased their thresholds as well. Next one, and I think this is particularly important, we'll start seeing a bit of, further talks and proposals coming out later in the year. They're going to be looking at phase 2 of the rental reforms to our Residential Tenancies Act. I'm sure most people probably haven't realised that they're planning to come back and have a second phase of these rental reforms. Reba's strongly suggesting that there's a balanced approach taken to these second phase, and they remain having an environment that's conducive to investment. So we don't want to go down the road that other states have been down, especially Victoria, where it's become a lot more prohibitive with the Residential Tenancies Act. to be a landlord, and that on top of many other things in somewhere like Victoria's, scared off investors entirely. And so it's really crucial that any proposed further reforms, relating to minimum standards, maintenance and repairs, and other aspects of being a landlord, being a tenant, that they're handled with a balanced approach so that it doesn't scare people and affect our overall rental supply. So definitely be keeping an eye on that and keeping you updated on the proposals as they start to firm up. Now, next ones. The final one that I wanted to mention was what Rhea was proposing here with the home buyer's assistant account. It basically gives $2,000 grant for incidental expenses for first home buyers when they purchase a property that is less than threshold. The threshold at the moment is $500K, and what Rhea was proposing is that it be linked to the REWA median price. So at the moment, median price is $740. There's a lot of people that would qualify for the first homeowners grant even and not qualify for the assistance grant. So want to make the two in line. If you get a first home buyer's grant, you get a first home buyer's assistance of up to $2,000 for incidental expenses. So makes sense to tie that to things and ensure that the money's going to those that need it with our first home buyers. So that is the entirety of the election issues that REWA is platforming. Be interesting to see what the different political parties come up with. Do they adopt any of these? Do they touch anything else that might have some significant impacts? I'll be keeping you updated as they start to publish and firm up their policies. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Wishing you a happy new year. I hope you had a wonderful break as well. It's going to be an exciting time this year, and I'll be here to bring you all the updates with Perth Property Insider. So thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, like or review us. I love reading any of your reviews. So I appreciate everyone that tunes in. So thanks for that, and catch you on the next one.
Just a reminder, the information discussed in this podcast is general in nature. As we don't know your specific situation, you should always seek professional advice before taking any action. For free market reports on your suburbs of interest and other helpful resources to grow your wealth, make sure you join my property investor update at investorsedge.com.au/join. And finally, make sure you're a member of our Perth Property Investment Facebook group to be part of the conversation with other like-minded investors, get help to your questions, and get a feel for what's going on out there in the market. I'll see you in the group.